We don't have a flag.
Okay.
Oh, we do have a flag.
I think we need to do it for the video. It's gonna be on video, so let's just.
We're rolling, so whenever you're ready.
So welcome to Lake Bluff School District 65 Board of Education regular meeting for May 1st, 2018. Julie, could you please take the roll for open session?
Susan Ryder. Present. Philip Hood.
Present.
Mark Barry.
Present.
Leanne Charlin. Julie Gottschall, present. Richard Head.
Present.
John Rose.
Present. All right, we all present and accounted for. We have a quorum. We're going to begin today's meeting with the pledge. Please join me by standing and saying pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We now have the opportunity to public comment. If anyone wants to address the board, please do so now. Not seeing any, I offer the opportunity to the board or administration to add a discussion item to the meeting. I see a hand, Dr. Sophie.
Yes, I would like to add 6D. We need an update on the LVES air conditioning units, or lack thereof. And we're not asking for approval, but we're giving an update this evening.
Okay.
There have been several articles in the last several months, and I think at some point, Gene, this doesn't have to even be in the next couple of months, but I think before fall, some sort of presentation by you on the teacher shortage. I think would be helpful as we go into next year.
I was planning on having it ready for June. I don't know if it will be ready for June. It might be better off in August. We have 2 meetings in August. So.
And I was going to recommend talking about we had discussed about working with Vote Lake Bluff, the caucus, about doing a meeting to talk to potential candidates for the school board. People want to give them a little inside information what it's all about. We heard from Jill Rosa today that was scheduled for Monday, but she's working with her people to see if we're going to hold that one. So I would have promoted it, but now we're saying we'll wait with print. I guess that's it, unless anybody else has anything they want to add. So we're going to go right into our first report discussion on standards-based reporting by Kelly Bay and Nate Blackburn.
All right. Is it okay if we just sit and then advance the slides?
You might need to go off to the side though.
Okay.
Same package, it's in our work package, right?
Yes,
Same
yeah.
presentation.
All right, so we and I presented in the fall with our standards-based reporting committee, and as promised, we are back tonight with an update as we're nearing the end of the year. So we're going to fill you in just to reiterate the purpose of standards-based reporting, why we think it's such a valuable shift here at Lake Bluff Middle School and within Lake Bluff School District. I want to talk with you a little bit about the progress that we've made across this school year and then fill you in on our timeline moving forward. So when it comes to standards-based reporting, in a nutshell, the goal is really to accurately report information to students and their parents about what they know, understand, and can do. And it's becoming even more clear through the research and learning that we're doing that a traditional point-based grading system falls short on providing accurate information about student learning and student growth. So our previous report card, which is the most visible tool, needs changing and needs updating so that we are really accurately communicating to students and to their families. As teachers, we are held accountable to align our instruction to standards, and that work has been happening and continues to happen. But when we report out with a letter grade, there's a disconnect there. And so we really want to make sure that we bring the two together, that we're teaching to standards and we're also reporting out on those standards.
I think one of the things, and Kelly touched upon this already, standards-based practices have been in place for a number of years. Probably we've been working on this for 5 or more years and working to improve the way in which we're addressing those standards in our classes. And really that kind of final step is to incorporate it into the reporting mechanism for parents and help to communicate that accurately to them. And so that's sort of the why behind, I think, what is much more of a visible effort right now, because obviously we're having dialogue with parents. We're bringing in advisory groups, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But certainly, hearing what parents have to say, working to build a handbook for them to have a resource to go to, in addition to speaking to us directly or speaking to the teachers directly. And that advisory group has actually spent some time looking at a draft of that handbook, and we'll get to that as well. I think one of the other things that's really important to mention, though, is that we aren't alone in this work. Our entire tri-district day that occurred this year, which included 115 and 67, the entire focus of that day was standards-based reporting. And I'm happy to say it wasn't even our idea to make that a topic of conversation for that tri-district day. It went well. Our teachers presented themselves very well and ended up, while not intending to be sort of the experts in the room, they definitely were looked to by many from the other two districts in that regard. They were excited about what's being done here. Many of those steps have been taken at Deer Path. So there's work being done. As recently as last Wednesday, we attended, I think, our third Rick Wormley workshop out in Woodridge. I estimate about 600 other educators, administrators and teachers in that room from all over the Chicagoland area, including Lake Forest.
All about SBR.
The whole thing, the whole workshop is about standards-based reporting and implementation, training teachers and schools on how to do it. So we're not out.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
Is 67 on a similar timeline to us, or?
They're a little behind where we are. Yeah,
And same with the high school too, right? They're not there yet.
Further behind.
yeah.
Without, tightening up other work, it's because it's not just about a report card, it's the instruction behind it and under curriculum that's guaranteed and viable, meaning that the same thing's happening from class to class, and there's a progression from course to course. So that's a lot of the work that they're doing now.
And I'm gonna have another question, but cut me off if you're gonna address this later. Are there other districts in the area that our community residents would be familiar with, who are already doing some of what we might want to be doing soon?
I would say, I feel like Deerfield is a district that we look to for advice, examples, modeling. Northbrook 28 is another one that I've been in correspondence with. Oak Grove is taking steps to move forward, and I would say they're on a similar time frame.
The reason I ask is just if people ask, because I know it's kind of controversial, people ask in the community, who those are who maybe we could point to for how it's working out so far, I
Yeah.
suppose.
And Killdeer,
I was gonna say
Killdeer 96, that school district has been, they're far ahead of us. They came to present to us 2 years ago on their work to make these
And
shifts.
they're already doing it. Thanks.
All right, so in terms of kind of continuing the conversation with progress this year, we have done a ton of work really during early release time, in-service days, faculty meetings, to help just build teacher understanding, because while we talk about things that are already happening, there's still work and alignment to be done. So we've had internal training led by our committee, and then that external training that Nate mentioned is more formally heading off to the workshop. Teachers are using Twitter to learn and connecting with other school districts, blog posts, things like that from across the nation. We've also been looking at different data management systems, so that really is like an online report card, something that would really help us communicate as clearly as possible to parents. So that's been part of the research phase for this year. And then Nate and I have been recording podcasts, short bursts of information to help provide information, and those can be found on the website, and we've been posting them on Facebook. So we've got a few more to go before the year wraps up, but pretty proud of that.
How many Facebook followers do you have?
It's a district site, and so I'm not sure what we're up to there, how many views or hits we've gotten, but we don't have a YouTube channel yet.
And we do have quite a
We do
few
have a YouTube channel.
on Instagram as well as Twitter, so we duplicate those there.
Okay, good.
So we're getting a little more Twitter love right now than Facebook. I think.
Yeah, I printed it out.
We haven't featured them on the YouTube channel, I guess is the better. When it comes to parents, this was a big area of emphasis for us, where we've been working closely with teachers, bringing parents into not only into the conversation, but helping to build their understanding. So some of the things to highlight in this area, we had 3 parent nights specifically on the topic of standards-based reporting. The first one in September was our most highly attended with about 15 to 20 parents there. We talked about an article, opened up conversation, answered questions. Our December meeting was around 10 parents came, so just continued with updates. Our March meeting, the most recent, there were 5 parents there, so it's decreasing as we move along, and I think there's various reasons for that. But we want to just continue to provide that opportunity. At parent-teacher conferences in the fall, we just set up a table, asked us about SBR. We had visitors, but none of the questions were about standards-based reporting, so for whatever that's worth. We got kind of excited, they'd come up and then it was something totally different.
Restaurant recommendation.
It was a good opportunity to connect with parents, so.
And then, as Nate mentioned, we have a parent advisory group. So there are 5 members of this team, and we were really careful to think about parents from across the district. So they're not just middle school parents. There are some that have children that are only at the elementary school right now, some with children at middle, and then even up to high school. So we just tried to have a range of kind of knowledge base.
Some that were totally against standards-based.
Yes.
That was my question.
Yes, we made sure that we included some opposition because part of the goal of that team was to seek feedback and input to gather information, but we also wanted to build knowledge base so that we can use parents to communicate information throughout the community. And I think we've been really successful. The handbook, the parent handbook, was a big piece for us that we wanted their feedback on what we included in there. So that's the parent piece.
So here's kind of the big one, I think, the timeline, where we've been and where we're going. Obviously, the 2016-17 school year was kind of the first really big push. There was conversations and work being done ahead of time, but that was the kind of big training year for us as far as teachers learning about standards-based practices and examining their instruction in class, and as the standards became available to them, we had work to do. Throughout this school year, that's continued. The feedback piece has been really critical for us, both from that advisory group as well as these larger informational meetings. Getting an idea of what teachers or what parents really want to see when they're looking at I'm going to use the term report card, but I think the reality is the feedback that we're providing, not just on a trimester basis, but throughout the year. Really nothing on a report card should be a surprise or new information to a parent, unless they choose to only look at it at that time. But it really is going to be available and continues to be available to them throughout the year. Whether it's going to be PowerSchool or another tool, we have some ideas and some recommendations for some improved tools for that. Looking ahead to next year, 2018-19 school year, this is the point in time where we want to roll out that kind of newly formatted tool that tells parents exactly where students are performing on those standards and we're going to call them priority standards. Those are the key areas within each of the subject matter being taught, so they can see how they're doing as it relates to the standards, and those numbers 1 through 4 will be used as opposed to grades 6 and 7, and then we'll have opportunities for more parent feedback, for more questions, for more parent education. That's going to be a really critical piece to us as we roll out the school year next year. And then as we move into 2019-20, there'll be a review of our conversation about 8th grade and what we want in place for 8th grade, what parents want in place for 8th grade. But as of next year, 8th grade will still come home with a letter grade, but we're also going to provide feedback on how they're performing as it relates to the standards.
So tell me, why can't grades and standards-based grading coexist? What's the argument for that? Because I think that's a concern that I think a lot of parents have. It's one that I have because we're conditioned to think one way. That's our conditioning, right? And I understand the standards, I understand that, but you're really kind of working with two audiences here, the learner and then the parent community that's trying to also reinforce what's happening in the school. And it seems as though, worry I have, and I think it's been articulated by a lot of parents, is a C on a report card means a different thing to a parent, and that maybe causes an alarm in a way that these numbers don't. Can you explain why they can't coexist?
Yeah. I think there's the philosophical challenge, I'll come back to that. I think the practical challenge is the first one that I'd address. As, you know, what we're really trying to do is instill a growth mindset in kids and not necessarily motivate them with a consequence or a reward of a letter grade that may really not tell you anything about what they can do or what they've learned. What we're trying to do is provide more meaningful feedback than simple calculation of a percentage. You got this many right out of this many problems, and somehow that provides an accurate assessment of what you have learned or can do. It may provide you a good example of what they were able to memorize and then put down in an assessment. But can they synthesize that information? Can they explain it? Can they utilize it in a different way? Those are the sorts of really critical elements of what we're doing, that we're trying to get to. That's just frankly very hard to do in a traditional percentage-based system, where we're taking correct answers and comparing them to the incorrect answers, and spitting out a percentage that we equate to a letter grade. It really isn't practical for most applications of standards-based assessment. I think then the other kind of the philosophical end, which I've spoken to when I talk to parents, and I know there's differing opinions on it, but we want kids to focus on growing in the areas where they need to grow. If they've demonstrated that they've mastered a concept or mastered an element of one of these standards, well, great, that's fantastic. We're going to move on to an area where you continue to need help. And right, that notion of alarm, I guess we don't want to alarm parent, but we want to be clear. This is the thing your child needs to work on, versus let's pump it up with some extra credit, or let's try and do something that maybe improves the grade but doesn't actually have an impact on student learning.
I think the thing that's hard to do, like, the reason you have to eliminate the letter grades, in my opinion, is like the connotation that's associated with it. So that, like, there's such a drive to get A's, and I think that sometimes that's like, well, they're motivated, and the A means, like, the A doesn't necessarily mean that they've learned it, and a C doesn't necessarily, I think you have to just kind of blow it up, and that's where using the performance descriptors of the 1, 2, 3, 4 is going to allow us to, like, really stop and try to wrap our heads around what the students know and are able to do. One more thing is that, like, the difference between, in most traditional systems, like, the difference between the A and the B is 10 percentage points, but then, like, that F range is 50 percentage points. So there's an arbitrariness to the way we issue letter grades, and I think that there's also been a practice of inflation, like some of the grade inflation that has occurred.
And I think what this conversation has done for our teachers is to really help unify an understanding of what it is kids are going to be doing at the end of their 6th grade year. What are we holding them accountable for? What are we holding them accountable for in science? What do they need to be able to know and do? We're creating rubrics and proficiency scales to really clearly articulate that, where, frankly, in years past, a teacher kind of sat there and said, well, I think this is a really important idea, so I'm going to weight it at this level, and this test is worth 100 points, that homework assignment's worth 20 points, and this participation grade may be worth, 30 points. I mean, that's in essence what teachers have been called upon to do, and then that we've never always something like that. That's not clearly communicating to teachers or to parents or to kids.
So I just had one other question. It sounds like we're not the first adopter, but we are a fairly early adopter. What thought have you put into, can Lake Bluff, a school district that scales pretty small, can we afford to be an early adopter? I mean, what's the advantage of being an early adopter of this versus seeing how this is rolled out in a bigger school district, what they learned from it? What's your thought process been to kind of be pioneering when our kids are going to be going into a high school with other kids that are coming out of a different experience? All of a sudden, letter grades are going to predominate high school and college. Why do you think that this will work for Lake Bluff, and that we should be really out there with this?
So I would start by saying that regardless of what adaption we do or don't do, we're going to be held to student achievement on these standards. That's the reality. I believe that by taking this approach, we're going to have a better chance at helping our kids to perform and meet those standards. Much better than a traditional grading system ever will. So to answer your question, no, I suppose we wouldn't have to adopt a reporting mechanism that communicates progress towards standards, but we're still going to be held accountable for it. And if
And it provides the best information to Lake Forest High School. Grades mean nothing to them.
and I said this was hard for me to do in a meeting with parents, but I highlighted the percentage of our kids that achieve A's and B's, right? It's like 88% of our kids. So I would challenge any parent to suggest that that's somehow communicating accurately to Lake Forest High School.
It gets worse once they go to college.
Right. So let's find a way to accurately communicate to them, and throughout the transition process, there are counselors over at the high school chomping at the bit to understand and be able to see what our kids are doing specifically in those classes and how what they've learned, what they know and can do. And a B doesn't tell them that. An A doesn't necessarily tell them that either.
What kind of reception have you gotten from the parent community to all of this?
We've gotten some pushback from a small group.
What is their big argument
Oh,
against,
small.
or their big concern? Because I'm not tied into that, so is there a lot of different concerns, or is there like one major concern in the blowback that we're getting?
One big argument is that they're gonna be getting grades at the high school, we need to train them and teach them how to get grades before that happens. That's one of, I think the high school is a big piece of it. But it's a calculation, which isn't even really a consistent calculation from one class to the next. So to teach to get grades isn't the strongest argument.
We spent, virtually no time training them to get letter grades when they came in 6th grade. That was a calculation they learned in 3rd and 4th grade. They understood it. It wasn't hard for kids to learn how to receive letter grades in the traditional sense. So I kind of questioned this notion that they would have to then learn to receive letter grades as they transition from 8th grade to 9th grade. One of the other sort of pieces of feedback that we've received is this issue of motivation. And I think, and I would tell you that as we talk with kids now, today, in these classes, the conversations that we're having about what they need to do different, it's no longer, hey, what do I have to do to get to the A? Mom and Dad really just need me at the B level, what do I need to do? That's not the conversation. It's, I noticed that my 2-step equation work is not great, and I'm not quite sure where. We're talking about the details of the learning. Why didn't I get to the 4 level in that concept? It's changed the conversation teachers and kids are having about their learning. It really has, and it's been exciting to see. So it is a big jump, I think, for us as people who are accustomed to receiving grades to disconnect ourselves from this notion that grades are a reward or a consequence for learning. We're going to teach it to them until they learn it. If they aren't demonstrating that they're learning material, it's our responsibility as educators to go back at it and to give them another shot and to try something different. Not just say, hey, sorry, you got a D, hopefully somewhere along the line you'll pick it up. That's a diagnostic tool that teachers are using to know very specifically where their students may be struggling, and if they've already achieved mastery of a certain concept, we're not going to continue to hammer them with that. Let's do something else. Let's do something more. Let's extend the five. It's definitely providing our staff. Sorry, I think we're high horse.
It's all right.
These are good answers.
I like the energy.
Okay. I think from the teaching perspective, it provides a lot of great feedback, both for the kids and the teachers.
Can I take a step back? I have a kind of a comment / question. When you guys were talking about some of the practical considerations in favor of SBR, one of them I don't think you said, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't also another consideration to the inconsistency from teacher to teacher if you're teaching the same subject, how a kid could maybe get an A in this class and only get a B in this class because teachers have a lot of flexibility in the way they grade and offer extra credit and stuff like that. Because of all the detail you're providing as feedback now, it makes for more consistent feedback to the student, right?
Absolutely.
And of course, in a small school like ours, that's less an issue. Most of our subject area teachers are the only one in their grade,
Right.
unless you're looking at math or
But
like.
the big picture
But big
kind of
picture,
argument.
absolutely. I hear all kinds of conversation. This teacher is this way. This teacher is that way. You can expect a different level of
So,
I don't know how it was in college, looking for that teacher, that was the easy one.
so this all makes great sense to me. Why not just roll it out with 8th grade then?
We are going to roll out 6th and 7th grade, get feedback on it, and then we're gonna consider what we're gonna do with 8th grade.
So like a pilot test kind of thing.
It's not, we're not calling it a pilot, it's just, we think it's gonna be enough rolling out 6th and 7th grade, and 8th grade will most likely be the next year. But we wanna see how this all rolls out next year.
Yeah, I think from our end too, there's just a little bit of the transitional logic, like we've got kids in 8th grade who have kind of progressed through sort of 2, if not 3 systems, you know, and so let's not do one more before they transition to a new.
So what does the report card look like for parents? What feedback do they get now?
So currently it looks just as it did when you've gotten that report card for the most part. One of the things that we've learned is that PowerSchool has some limitations in the way that we want to report out that information. There's some options out there that we are pretty excited about, but we're still kind of working through it. There are systems that will basically feed into PowerSchool and provide the student information system what we need it to provide, but give us the flexibility to report out to parents in a way that looks just clean and easy to understand. It's gonna have more information than your current report card does.
You'd see like math and then the 7 to 10 or 12, what we're calling priority standards that have been measured or will be measured throughout that course. And then there'll be a performance level, a 1, 2, 3, or 4 for each of those standards. In addition to that, you'll see a section titled learner characteristics where teachers are reporting out on the student's proficiency when it comes to work habits, responsibility, cooperation, the softer but still extremely important skills that feed into their ability to learn.
That's important. That was something that did get added this year.
I like that one.
Yeah,
I do too.
and it helps to break out what in a traditional grading system can artificially inflate deflated grades, right? It's that compliance. Yes.
I think what's going to be more important than that report card, if I may, is when a unit starts and when a unit ends, the communication that's going home. So before you start a math unit, the teacher's communicating, these are the standards we're going to be working on, this is what mastery looks like, they live through the unit, they understand, is this standard going to come back around again, or is this like the time when I really need to show that I've learned it? So that's where a lot of conversation is happening now as well, like how else are we communicating beyond the report card, or what's going to be within PowerSchool or that electronic grade book.
Some of the feedback that we got from that parent group was great. Tell me more about the standards. So we started in our weekly updates, including those as the communication that comes home. These are the standards we're working on this week, or these are the standards we assess this week. And so it's getting that language in people's minds.
So the standards are fluid, every unit, I can look on PowerSchool and they'll see, but different setting.
They're end of year standards, so that's important to keep in mind. You would imagine throughout the year you're going to see students with lower scores at the beginning because we've just introduced those concepts. And there may be standards that have enough data for us to report out on at the end of the trimester, but others that have just been introduced, and so you can expect to see a 1, maybe a 2. And as you progress toward the end of the trimester, you hope to see those numbers moving up.
So you have the end game in mind.
End game in
And where you want to have them by each June.
So will those same standards be present, how many reporting quarter, we have 2 semesters or quarters?
Three trimesters.
So the same standards will be there for all 3, and you'll
Yes.
be making progress against those standards over time.
Correct.
So you have a whole year to try to achieve mastery, yes.
Which speaks a little bit to that question too about grading, where if we're going to be throwing letter grades on there, it's not really fair to say, hey, you got a D on a bunch of stuff we haven't taught you yet.
All this makes great sense. I think the communication plan with parents is going to continue to be ongoing and some sort of, because if there's anything I get cornered on at parties, it's this.
I understand why. I mean, what, are you getting, like, this is great, or are you getting?
No, they think it's awful.
Terrible.
They think it's awful. And I try to, again, I think I've known this, and I throw the bits and pieces of this, but even for me as a school board member that has heard this a number of times, I think some regular communication out as a reminder to people as to the why is going to be really important.
I think you hit it on the head when you said, why are these mutually exclusive concepts? Because what I'm seeing is pretty uniformly, everyone, if I had 3 different kids with 3 different aptitudes, I'd see ones, I don't know what's lower, what's lowest, ones and
One
then
is
fours.
the-
Okay,
is the-
so I'd see a lot of ones at the beginning, a lot of 2s in the middle, hopefully 3s and 4s at the end. And every kid is gonna sort of look like that, just on the nature of learning during the school year. So how do I know how my child's doing, sort of relative to others in the class? If I'm a straight A student, well, this is going great. If it's,
So I would suggest that how they're doing relative to others maybe isn't the right way to look at it. I'd like to know how they're doing compared to themselves. Are they growing? Are they improving? It's a different way of thinking about it, and I recognize I'm challenging a little on that.
I
But
agree.
But this is what standards-based reporting definitely throws a little kind of, it makes it hard to compare your child to others.
Well, and if you have a child that is self-motivated in that way, there is a disincentive to sort of, and I've heard, is retesting part of this? I didn't do well, I'll blow it off the first time and I can just take it over. Like, I've heard in my children's friends' voices, real consternation over this. They don't like it. They like getting the satisfaction of the grade.
So I would tell you, and we knew this going in as we started with the retakes and the redos, there would be a segment of the population who would take that approach until they had to do it the first time, and they recognized, good heavens, I have to not only prepare and learn the material I didn't learn the first time, I have to stay current with the new material that's being taught. And by the way, I gotta take home this form, and I gotta explain it to mom and dad, and they have to sign it, and if they don't sign it, now, in its infancy, in its beginnings, we didn't have a tight process for that. We do now, I would say. We have a process that enables kids to retake, but with parameters. They have to demonstrate what they're going to do and how they're going to work to show that they've learned this material. It's not as easy as just, because they really haven't done that and generally don't want to do it again. I can't speak for every student in every scenario, but that's generally the feedback that we get. The notion of homework not being required. Well, we certainly are reporting out on homework, and that shows up in the learning characteristics. And oh, by the way, they were starting to figure out that if it's meaningful homework, and it should be, boy, it does contribute to better performance on the assessments when they come. And, right, but to your point, it's a different.
I like a lot of it. I just, more of a hybrid approach maybe. I'm done.
No, I guess the question too is that when mastery is apparent very early, where does the enrichment program pick up?
And that's why I think this is even better, because there are going to be students in the beginning that have a strong grasp of the material, so it's going to force the conversation with the child. Like, here's what we're calling performance or a proficiency scale, which clearly states this is what mastery looks like. So the student can, and it lists those things out. If the student's already doing that, then we need to have a conversation about, well, how many times have they demonstrated this? Do they need more opportunities to show that it's solid and that they can transfer it? Do we need to go deeper into that standard itself, or do we need to go into maybe the next grade level standard, the next course standard? And then I think this forces us to notice that right away, because if everyone's getting A's from the beginning, it's not as clear who actually has it. If a child is getting a 4, it's going to prompt that conversation.
Is our standard for mastery a high bar?
It's based on the standards for that content area.
Where does that come from?
The state and then even nationwide standards. So I think that they are highly rigorous. I throw that word out there, but
Okay.
they are a high level, and especially upon the adoption, like there was a big shift in terms of the challenging work that we're asking kids to do. So there is a high.
Okay, as long as we're feeling like I think like Bluff expects where you're, I think the community does.
I think these guys had a question, so I want to make sure we get to them too.
When we were elected, how many years ago now? 6,
million.
7, a million, yeah. I remember talking about individual learning plans for everyone.
Yep.
And this is what that enables. That, to your point about what happens when somebody masters it right away, if they have to wait till the end of the unit to get their A, when during that unit is the enrichment coming in, right? If instead we're getting assessments right, throughout the unit and they've mastered everything in there, then it's time to go deeper. to me, it makes perfect sense as to individual learning plans for high achievement kids as well.
I think it allows us to get even more granular too, so if you
Exactly.
might be, have mastered this standard, but this one still needs work, so you can continue to practice this one while we raise
Right.
the level of this one, so it allows you to, instead of just like, well, you're a 7th grader taking math, it seems like you know what we're gonna teach you 8th grade, we can dig a little bit deeper into the 7th grade standards to see, well, which ones do you have solid, and then where.
So for your rollout, your communication to parents, I think you might hit a lot of parents that you may be worried about this by pointing out exactly that. Many of us had kids sitting out in the hallway because they passed out of units and doing something completely irrelevant to what the rest of the kids were doing, and it was suboptimal at best. So I think focusing on all range of learners, and especially the high-end learners, and the opportunities we have to teach to them is really a selling point that's gonna help you get the point across.
And really capitalizing on, we have students who do school really well. I mean, we've always had that. But doing school doesn't necessarily equate, they're compliant, they're on top of everything that we ask them to do. What we're now doing is pushing them beyond just kind of surface level understanding or rote memorization. They really, to speak to your point about the standard, they are rigorous. You have to do things that are challenging our kids and do in different ways. And the feedback that they're getting along the way, the process that it takes to get to mastery, is starting to overtake that reward they may have feel because they got it. I think it is a shift for it's a big shift.
I feel like-
So the comment I have is, I love the idea of every child has the opportunity to obtain mastery at a different pace, because kids learn differently, and we can tweak it so that every kid gets the support they need, and we can go above and beyond for those kids who attain mastery earlier. So here's a little bit of a devil's advocate kind of question, perhaps related to what maybe some parents are thinking, because I have to admit, I think about it a little bit. I kind of feel like, as a parent, I grew up in a parenting generation that was kind of perhaps too soft on our kids, and that perhaps our kids didn't grow up with enough grit. And one of the things missing in today's generation is that grittiness perhaps fostered by competition. Competition was always there in the past because of our ABC grading system. I don't think that competition is a bad thing. I think competition is kind of fundamental to success in a capitalist world, right? Is there any way to foster competition, to foster that grittiness that comes with that?
So my response to
Because
that
I
is-
love a lot about this. I
Yeah.
just think there's something not quite there that I wouldn't worry about.
Well, Mark, if you and I are both learning the same thing, and I, of course, have mastered it already, and am in the advanced class, and you.
Which is likely to be the way it's going to be.
And you are not, you may be looking at me saying, well, why is she working on advanced problems? I want to do that. Why is she?
So you're saying maybe it would just occur naturally?
It does occur naturally. And it does get back to the whole reason we brought this in, which I forgot. You nailed it. It was in our strategic plan for individual learning plans, and that's what it's going to result in.
And I'm not saying I think that part of it is wonderful.
I
Do you feel motivated yet to catch up with me?
I was just gonna throw out that I don't think our schools are our problem with lack of competition, and
Yeah.
it's our parents that
Yeah,
are the big problem.
I agree.
So, I mean, it's,
But
And
I
the
would
grade
tell-
inflation is a real issue at the high
It's a
school.
huge issue.
It's huge. I mean, somebody gets a B, a B minus, and they're like, it's
it's a huge
It's true.
workforce problem with people.
Oh, it
The first
is.
time they get constructive criticism from a supervisor, they melt.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's.
we're not doing.
But I don't
favors
know
like
that
giving
grades
out
are the way
ribbons
to do
to
it.
Right,
And
right.
having to continue to do something until you master it seems to me a very different, but very effective
perhaps
way
maybe that's fostering grit
fostering
too.
grit,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Because otherwise you get your D and you move on, you know?
I think, I get feedback from people about this too, and not really supportive at all, ever.
it's, and I try to point people to the idea that the feedback that they're getting now is more detailed than what we got before.
And this isn't the finished product, I want to be clear about that. What parents have seen now, and this is our challenge, is we're in an intermediate step.
Because of our ability to report how our school's not working in the summer.
Well, I think a question, you know, as a parent, you look at the standards and all the detail and all that stuff, and you think, wow, that's really interesting. So we have a 3 and we have a 4 and we have a 2 or whatever you have. But there's also, on our part, you step back and you say, okay, well, what does that, tell me what that means.
Give the bottom line.
Are we doing okay here? We're not doing okay here. Because I don't really understand, you know, these very detailed pieces of feedback about, I mean, my kids probably do. But if I look at it, I just want to know, are we making, you know, making good progress? Are we going to be ready for 7th grade or 8th grade? That kind of stuff. And I think that is what feels a little bit disconcerting. Whereas if your child is getting an A, you kind of feel like, okay, that probably means he's going to be ready for 7th grade. Or if he's getting a C or a D, then maybe I'm going to meet with a teacher to talk about what we would need to do to get there. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Sure.
I don't,
And
we don't know
and
this
so my answer
scale.
to that is, I would hope no parent ever expects the report card to communicate that. That is not the purpose of the report
Oh.
card. If I have a concern as a teacher that your child is not learning the material they need to learn, I need to be doing something other than waiting for the end of the trimester for you to get a report card to call me and ask a question.
Okay.
That's not what I would suggest to you as the purpose of the report card. It's a snapshot in time, right? This is what happened, this is where we are at this moment. But if there's areas of concern, and that's a big part of what we do as educators, to reach out and communicate it, build a plan, have suggestions, have ideas for closing the gap if one exists. That's our put on our report card.
If it's not for that, then what do I need all this data for as a parent? What do I need all of those data points for? It's not to let me know that.
To show you where they are right now, right? I mean, if I'm talking about, to answer your question, are they, if they're not performing well,
Yeah.
and I would suggest to you that we're not relying upon you to wait and discover that on a report card. We need to be more proactive in that and communicate that to you well before the end of the trimester.
Yeah, I get it. I guess just, you know, there's a question like, okay, what do I do with this data that you're giving me? And I'm not asking necessarily to answer that right now, but I think it's a question that
I
comes up
think
with
it's what
people.
parents are gonna be asking.
And
I do.
like,
We just want to know it's going okay.
yeah, and I
right?
think in
Or-
an effort to provide more information, we're causing a little bit of cross-eyed because there's so much
Yeah.
information,
And we
but
realize-
Like,
said,
how
what about
important is this? Do I need a tutor for that
Yes.
standard that we don't get? Or, like, what does that mean? It doesn't,
I think you're gonna get a lot of that after the first.
And I think that's I made a note so that as we think about our parent communication and our parent training, like what are the signals? Like when as a parent, should you be worried? What does that look like? How can your child and the teacher make that abundantly clear throughout the trimester?
because if you take a parent, like, just, you know, raise my hand. So I look at the thing and I see 4, 100% great. Or, right, because we don't know what we're really looking at or dealing with. Or I get a 3, which means, oh, that's a 75, let alone a 2, wow, 50%, you know, 50%, that's never good. Like, what does it mean?
Yeah. Not that.
Okay, good. So I'm just sharing with you the kind of stuff like people are, you know, asking.
Please be prepared for those kinds of thinking
Yeah,
Yeah, well, questions to,
So
you know,
when I was at one of these sessions last year, I noticed that sometimes 1 was what I should expect, and other times 4 was what I should expect. And what was not clear from the materials you guys showed at the time was how I was supposed to decipher when my kid was supposed to be at 1 and when my kid was supposed to be at 4. And I think maybe the methodology of reporting is key, but I think to that point, if it's just been introduced and so 1 is what we expect, I should be told that 1 is what we expect, right?
Yeah, you know, and it's an
Like in the
oversimplified
narrative,
analogy,
right?
but it's one I use often. It's the kid learning to ride the bike analogy, right? You got kids who learn at 2 and 2.5 and 3, and then you got other kids that for one reason or another don't learn until 5, 6, 7. For me to answer for a parent the question, when should my child be ready to ride a 2-wheeler? Well, it's a developmental piece and it's a practice piece and it's, you know,
Well, maybe-
it doesn't apply to all concepts, I know. But I think it speaks to the idea that, you know, kids are gonna learn things at a different rate and we need to figure out if they're not learning, if they're not growing, how to help
So
them.
would it be possible that over each standard you know, where I get my 1 in the box or my 2 at the box, we could say, ideally, your child would be at 2 at this time. Ideally, your child would be at 3 at this time, just so we have something to target against.
Except every kid's different, right?
Well, no, I know, but I,
Ideal for your
but
kid
no.
Well, I
might be
think we
different.
could-
What we're saying here is
In
no,
terms
right?
of like taste, like when, like if, how much instruction's been delivered on that standard.
Right.
And if it's coming back around again.
Yes.
So like, I do think we're gonna need more than just a report card to go home, but I also think that it starts like day 1 of school. We're not gonna wait until the end of the first trimester to start to communicate that. And we also wanna schedule for next year, like right after report cards do go home, we have a parent night after that, or multiple ways for parents to be able to call in or join in that session so that we can elaborate on some of that. Some is gonna be very course specific, so we have to think about, is there an insert that goes with the report card? Is there something on the electronic grade book that's communicating
Well, that's-
that? Is there something in the weekly update that's helping parents to stay on top of that?
So
Yeah, I think there has to be, because
I
that,
agree.
just getting a 1 would be very
It has to
disconcerting.
be in perspective.
And
And
it seems to me there's not a lot of work coming home. Now, maybe this is just my children, making sure that I don't see a lot of it. But I think there's not a lot of work coming home, and then maybe you pick it up at conferences or something.
So that was some interesting feedback that we
So,
also got from a
yeah.
parent, and we
Because that
pulled
helps
out,
fill in those
it's there,
blanks.
Totally.
for
Of
for
what-
some, yeah. I think that's part of the piece that we need to also help parents to understand. There's a whole other element of student engagement and self-monitoring that's going on in these practices that didn't exist before. And when we started directing parents' attention to that rubric or that self-monitoring, I've never seen that. Well, they were right, they haven't. The kid hasn't shown them, but they have it, and we went through that, and I followed up with that parent. When they saw what we were referring to, they were pleased. They, wow, this is great, I wish I'd have known. I just didn't know what to ask. And that was, again, good feedback for us, like, okay, we gotta build in some checks and balances here. As simple as a parent signature, like, you gotta take this home, show mom and dad, let's make sure that happens.
I
There's
get
also,
like 3 of those a year.
Because that hasn't been part of that hasn't really, that hasn't been part of our practice. And
In alignment with that too, you guys, and we don't have time to talk about it tonight, but you do need to let parents know what's gonna happen with midterms, because that's just one more check-in point for parents. So they're gonna need to know what to expect from midterms.
I took 2 comments. One is related to what Leanne said. When my kids were in elementary school a few years ago, this goes back a little bit, but among the parents I talked to, everybody was overwhelmed by the amount of homework. It wasn't how little we're getting, it's, oh my God, this is crazy.
So kids get a lot of homework, excuse me. I just don't see a lot of it where it's been graded to know how they did it.
Oh, okay,
Like as a
okay.
feedback.
and we have a vision for a tool that we're looking at to help support with that. So it would be beyond what Power School is capable of at this time. So
Which
that's
is
one
just the
layer,
points and
but then I do think that just the good old have a parent signature is probably gonna be a practice that
I think one of the hurdles you're facing, and it seems a lot of this has to do with how we communicate to the parent community about addressing these kinds of issues. How do you practically use this at home, maybe in conversations with your child or your spouse? But you're also facing the hurdle of we're all now part of the Twitter generation, where you have 136 characters or whatever it is to communicate your message, and you far exceeded that. You know, with all these different lines, people can't deal with that.
Yeah.
If Facebook doesn't get me my message in like 3 lines, I move on to the next thing because I have no attention span anymore. And I think that's everybody. We've all been, parents, especially younger parents, have this much attention span because of the social media and stuff. So it's just a hurdle. It's a reality of the world you're
And we've
facing.
been conditioned with grades. I mean, that's all we know. And so it's very uncharted territory. I think that like you don't know what it means. And then I also think when we're dealing, especially with middle school students who have the strategy to play that, we want to be really cognizant of like how do we support you as parents to have educated conversations with your children on a topic that's new for you too.
So what's the consequence going to be for the teacher? So 4 is the end game in June each year. You want everybody to be 4s. You're going to know what the teacher's been kind of working. What's the consequence to the teacher who, after 5 years of evidence, their kids are always coming up in 2s and 3s by the end of the year? I mean, how's this going to come? I mean, I see the accountability piece for the students, but I mean, have you thought about that at all, about how you evaluate teachers? I mean, and as our funding model and our accountability standards become, you know, much more rigorous, what are the consequences to the teacher?
So I can,
Because they're either meeting mastery, which can be validated through the testing that we do, or they're not, and either the teachers are showing proficiency at getting students to become masters, or they're not. This is way down the
Yeah,
road,
I think we'll have to address
That's
that.
an interesting
But-
consideration. It seems like a more
Very
consistent
interesting.
tool for that kind of thing.
this is becoming this whole thing is becoming like Moneyball in baseball. This is like sabermetrics.
Where's Billy
No,
Beane?
it really is. I mean, like either you got like really. I mean, there's no. I mean, you got this golden teacher award and all that. It's really subjective. But at some point, like, is the teacher community going to be ready for a school board that sits and goes into labor negotiation and is like, that person shouldn't even be here anymore. They should be like in the minor leagues now because we got
think we're
data
there
and
yet.
statistics.
We're close.
No, I know,
It's like a
but
totally separate.
That's
but
not-
that's where this is going.
I totally agree. I think that's an excellent point. It's all about the data. We're coming up with more and more data and you figuring out how to use it. We don't know how to use it yet, right? This is this whole new
Don't tell
thing.
don't tell the unions this, but
Yeah.
this is how I would be looking at it as a school
It seems
board.
quite a ways off for the moment.
I don't know.
I see.
Any
So-
other
so
questions as
actually,
we
I
wrap
agree.
up tonight?
Well, we wrap up with this topic.
Right.
That was awesome.
Yeah,
It
that was
was
really
awesome.
good. Great.
Thank you. Thank
Very
you.
well done.
You guys may go.
thank you, Shane.
Thanks. Okay, so now we're moving on to item 6B, 2018-2019 board meeting calendar revisions. We've had to revise a couple of things on the calendar because the village hall wasn't available.
So
Changes, new
I want to point out a couple things. Number one, I am going to need everybody to email me if they are going to have the availability for the 2 August meetings. We're having 2 August meetings because we're limited to 1 September meeting. So I need to know ahead of time if your availability for those 2 days. But other than that, we had to change dates because of the availability. of
What are the
those.
2 dates?
2 August dates?
The 2 August is August 14th and August 28th.
We haven't finalized something.
So that's that.
Okay, so item C is the 27-2018 school calendar amendment. And because we made some changes to the calendar due to an emergency day, we have to make that change.
Right, we used 1 snow day, so we have to amend it then.
And so that's just a procedural thing that we're
Right.
required to follow that, right?
So I'm gonna be asking for approval on both B and C this next round.
So there's
right
no,
here.
that's it for discussion, right?
No, we had added D to
Oh, we're at-
IHC.
Sorry, you're right, the air conditioning at the elementary school.
And if you pull out this IHC memo that was in your packets, you can see that when they bid out for the air conditioning, they also bid out for the other 3 units. Jay, I'm gonna turn it over to you at this point.
Okay, we started up the air conditioners this spring, and unit number 4, also, I think it was 4 or 5, had a coil that failed, and then the AC unit on one of the other ones is starting to go bad, and we think that it's prudent to just replace them all right now, because we can't risk them going out in the middle of the year, and it looks like they're at the end of their life. All the units are, and so,
The work has been done, the bids already went out,
I
Town
said that months
Prono
ago,
bid them all.
that we should do them all.
yeah.
That's right. We honestly didn't think, what are the chances of
I
the other
really
ones going
thought the
out?
other 3 were gonna be okay.
It seemed-
with it.
Doesn't sound like we need.
Yeah.
The wells, yeah.
It wasn't broken.
I would
They're
think start
on-
being
You're having a
Yes.
good rain that's like, you know, thousands of dollars a day, yeah.
That's
So-
just it, so,
So it's already been bid, the total cost, it would be an additional $462,000. There may be some additional, like express shipping to get the units out here at the same time, because we're just ordering them now. It'll be about $1 million.
So it's 484 plus 462 plus change.
Plus the whites upfront fees.
So, right,
plus-
But we're doing it all at one time.
shipping. We're doing it all at one
Yes.
time in
Yeah.
June. The crane will already be out here, so we'll save some money,
Mm-hmm.
not having to bring a crane out twice. And,
they needed our approval this week, but we found out about it too late to get on the approval for this. So we're just letting all of you know, and we'll bring it for approval next
Tell me
Tuesday.
how this fits into the budget.
So
Yeah, right.
I currently I budgeted $300,000 this year in the operating budget, and they're not gonna do this until July, so we're actually not gonna spend any of it, and it's not in your year-to-date numbers. So we're currently running we may be about $400,000 favorable this year, plus the 300 that we're not gonna spend, so we'll probably add 6,700,000 into fund balance, and then this would all come out of fund balance next year. We budgeted as capital, not operating, because it's,
Did we get some insurance money, or was that for something else?
we got some insurance money to pay for the
Damage.
damage.
Right.
Mhm. So,
Is there like, in future, when we buy these new units, is there like an extended warranty you can buy like with your car?
A 9-year?
you know, we'll ask, I think these are a lot more, they're a lot less finicky than the other ones, they're ones that run,
It just seems so
forever.
wrong, 9 years.
We are still gonna come back. Susan had asked us to talk to legal about what our options are.
Yeah.
We have not done that yet, so.
I'm having the engineers look at the cooling fluid and seeing if we can pin down that.
If it's others than just the ones in the well, my thought was designing the building with those two to sit down, you know, and the well was really the design flaw, but if it's all of them, then
Yeah.
it's probably all on train and we don't have an argument, but whatever.
I think it will be difficult to prove, but we're gonna look into it anyway.
Well, don't spend too much money doing it, we have plenty to spend already.
That's why I didn't call, because
No,
I'm
no.
trying to limit my attorney phone calls.
Right, of course, and I don't want you to pursue anything that's not worthwhile. Now that it's all of them, I'm less enamored of my theory that the well was a design flaw.
How much all in are we spending this year, you know, what's the total process, how much was the last one?
Last what?
The whole thing that we approved?
The whole
It's
thing
on-
is like 950 or 2 million.
Yeah, I'm saying the whole thing will be
I was gonna say,
roughly.
Julie and I were talking, we want to teach the kids to grill, let's just not replace anything.
You know what, Julie?
I didn't have
Give
air
them your
conditioning
work number to
until-
call.
I never had air conditioning.
had.
Because I had parents
They
email
drew
me
way
left
up north
and
there,
right.
yes, this year.
I was down
We have a couple parents that keep their kids home in
Rich
the
went to school
fall.
in Civil War days.
Just allergy.
Allergies
I'll
are.
take a puff of Zyrtec. Take a Benadryl.
Our fund balance should be, end the year, we budgeted end year at 6.5 million, so it'd probably be closer to 7, a little over 7 in this one.
Okay.
Next.
We'll be bringing that to you.
And
Now
we're
we've
gonna
got
be
only
taking a
approvals.
deep dive on the fund balance in the future too, right? I mean, there's more that coming.
Yeah, and there's things out on the horizon, there have been things floated for cost shift is still in the news, and
They've been talking about that for years.
just all,
I'm not holding my breath anymore.
Okay,
there's
so,
something.
good.
It is always something.
Move on beyond the air conditioning. Okay, action items. Item A is a policy revision to policy 5:330, sick days, vacation, holidays, and leaves. Essentially, it means they're changing an and to an or.
Right.
Correct? Full-time 12-month personnel are entitled to 14 holidays, paid holidays unless Veterans Day or Lincoln's birthday are observed on weekend.
Right.
Anything you want to add to that?
That's it.
We have a motion to approve policy revision 5330, sick days, vacations, holidays, and leaves, as presented by the administration.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
John Rosen?
Yes.
Leanne Charlotte?
Sure.
Julie Gottschall, yes. Richard Hager?
Yes.
Philip Hood?
Yes.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
Mark Burns?
Yes, motion is approved. Field trips, we have several field trips to approve, and, let's see.
We have 3 field trips, Washington DC, Atwood, and Outdoor Ed. If you remember, boards have to approve anything either out of state or overnight. Springfield is no longer in here since we've made that a day trip.
Any details to these trips that we need to share, or? it's
They're all in the board packet.
All the board packet, which
Just
is
like
all
what we do
available on
every
our
year.
website if anybody's interested. Anybody on the board have any questions or comments about that?
No.
So may I have a motion to approve the Washington DC, Atwood, and Outdoor Ed field trips as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call vote, please.
Leanne Charlotte?
Yes.
Julie Gottschall, yes. Richard Hager?
Yes.
Philip Hood?
No.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
Mark Barry,
Yes.
John Morris.
Yes.
Motion's approved. Item C, approval of the amended 2018-2019 Board Education meeting schedule, which we already discussed in discussion, having to do with rescheduling because Village Hall wasn't available. Questions or comments? And motion to approve the amended 18-19 Board of Education meeting schedule as presented by the administration.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion's approved. The approval of the amended 2017-18 school calendar, again, as discussed in our discussions, because of an emergency days we use on February 9th, we have to update the calendar. It's procedural. Any questions or comments on that? Motion to approve the amended 17-18 school calendar schedule as presented by the administration.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Motion is approved. Item E, personnel report. Number of items on the personnel report. Under licensed new hires, transfers, and changes in positions. We're bringing in Alyssa Arwadi, a PE teacher at the middle school, to replace Doreen Butska effective for the 18-19 school year. Robin O'Connor, a .4 drama teacher at the elementary school, replacing Tom Beck, again for 18-19. Amber Youngman, a speech pathologist at the elementary school, replacing Jenny Lee for 18-19 school year. And Eileen Shearhart, a kindergarten teacher at the elementary school, replacing, what is that, for .5?
It's .5, that was the position that we added when we made all of our kindergartens full-time.
So it's
In
she's
the
replacing a
state.
range of time?
No, she's going from .5
Oh,
to
got it.
1.0.
Okay, gotcha. For the 18-19 school year. Thank you, sorry about that. Licensed rehires will include Fred Koch, .54 rehire from dismissal of part-time teachers at the elementary school for 18-19. Vanessa Grum, a .8 rehire from dismissal of part-time teachers at the elementary school for the 18-19 school year. And Sally Burden, .8 rehire from dismissal of part-time teachers at the elementary school for the 18-19 school year. And under licensed resignations, we have Jenny Lee relocating from the elementary school at the end of the 17-18 school year. Any questions or comments on any of that? We have a motion to approve the personnel report from May 1, 2018 as presented by the administration.
So moved.
Second.
A roll call vote, please.
Philip Hood,
Yes.
Susan Ryder,
Yes.
Mark Barry,
Yes.
John Morrison,
Yes.
Leanna Charlotte,
Yes.
Julie Gottschall, yes, Richard Hay.
Yes.
Okay, motion's approved. And finally, under action items, we have the consent agenda. For May 1st, this meeting's consent agenda includes the open session meeting minutes from March 13th, 2018, regular Board of Education meeting, the closed session meeting minutes from March 13th, 2018, regular Board of Education meeting, the April 3rd, 2018 special Board of Education meeting, the April 10th, 2018 special Board of Education meeting, the P card report, the bills report, the impress report, and the treasurer's report. Would anybody like any of that pulled out to discuss separately?
No.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda for May 1st, 2018 as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Susan Ryder,
Yes.
Mark Barry,
I'm going to abstain because I wasn't here for one of those those closed session meeting minutes that I can't approve, but it won't matter.
John Morrison,
Yes.
Leanna Charlotte,
Yes.
Julie Gottschall, yes, Richard Hay.
Yes.
Philip Hood.
Yes.
Motion's approved. Item 8 is the FOIA request. We got two, the details of which are in your board packet. One of them has to do with a school resource officer, questions about that. Another one has to do with spending money at the library again. Details are in your board packet.
Whatever that was.
Does anybody else have, are there any board, public comments for the board? Anybody? Anything else? All right, we have a motion to adjourn at 8:27.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
You guys know how to
Opposed?
turn that off.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We're gonna leave those there. Pick up the
All right.
If you wanna grab anything here, you're more than welcome, Phil.
I'm assuming you pressed stop.
Not on the diet.
What are you doing, Phil? What's going
Whole
on?
30.
You've
I'm
lost
on day 30 right now.
On day 30.
There you go, one more. Gonna make it till midnight.
All right, you're doing signing. Julie already did hers, right? So I'm gonna grab her stuff.